Hey, good, I guess good afternoon. It's 8:16. Give it a couple minutes. It's supposed to start in 2 minutes. I'm just getting all the stream set up. Thank you. Thank you. Testing. Uh, testing. Sorry, I'm just making sure the stream is good. Let me go ahead and start the broadcast on X as well, and then start the recordings. Should be starting in about 1 minute. All right. Give it about a minute, and then I'll get started. Just making sure everything's recording. Recording. Okay, guys, it's today's Sunday, 8:16. This is Dodge This with Honeycomb investing workshop for today. Thank you for those that tune in and listen. We're gonna go ahead and start off kind of the same process here. Just kind of do a market outlook, kind of what happened the last couple weeks, or I guess more importantly last week, and then I'll go ahead and talk about the focus that I'm looking at for the week, a couple positions that I'm in, and then a recap. So let's go ahead and kick it off with SPY here. Let me go ahead and change the screen on the stream. Minimize this. So let's first look at the SPY weekly. All right. So as you can see, let me zoom out a little bit. All right. So as you can see, after FOMC that week, to close out July, it kind of looked like we were forming lower highs, and then it actually hammered on the weekly there after the FOMC reaction, and we had a pretty strong breakout to start the month of August. So we saw this push. We broke above that previous all-time high at that 760.40 level, which was the current all-time high. It lasted for a few weeks, quite a few weeks, and that's kind of where I was watching. Potentially we were starting to form lower highs, and had we had that sell off during the FOMC week reaction, it had initially formed the lower low, but we wicked up pretty hard, and a lot of we saw a pretty nice recovery amongst tech, and most importantly, they got hammered pretty bad. And as far as the market goes, the weekly focus I had last week that I shared on previous, the Sunday that I posted a watch list for the option selling account, and also my outlook for SPY and my SPY zones weekly. So I said to watch out for the trend, right? Because is here we didn't, because the candle body on that this week's candle, we had a, even though we had the lower high, we didn't get another lower low to kind of confirm any kind of downtrend at that point. So my focus was to kind of make sure that you stuck with the trend, because at this point this essentially turned into a dip buy. And then it proved it by, 2 weeks ago we had this monster push where we broke out above that 760.40 to not only confirm that, we were able to break past that previous all-time high level, and we closed well above it, and we're back in price discovery, right, as far as SPY goes. So even with, this last week, it not quite the explosive move, but we did still close the week with another high. So I'll show you on the daily now. So this is even midweek. I was talking about, okay, just because we have a couple red days. So this was the 11th and the 12th. We had a couple red days after, breaking new all-time highs. We didn't even get anywhere near a retrace or a back test towards that initial 760 point 4 all-time high that had held for, multiple weeks. And so this is kind of what I was saying, like, hey, we, focus on the trend. Anything, just because they have a couple red days doesn't confirm any kind of actual reversal at this point. You kind of zoom out. Maybe intraday you had opportunity to maybe scalp it. do some short plays, that's totally fine. But as far as the overall big picture, I would tend to lean a little bit more bullish, just because of the fact that we were able to hold that sell off, and then we went ahead and made all time highs, right? And so we're still maintaining above it. I will, just because of uh, my bias is long doesn't mean we won't, this price action is price discovery. I'm still anticipating some kind of back test at some point. I don't know when we'll see it, or what kind of catalyst will trigger that, but just keep an eye on it. If we do hold and back test this previous all-time high that was acting as resistance for multiple weeks, and it starts to act as support, then I would, like I said, as far as what I was looking at in the market, continue, right, maintain the trend. So let me kind of share. If you're not familiar, I do share that on in the Discord, and I already posted it on X. It should be coming out later. Actually, I apologize, but in the Discord, it's already out. So this is kind of what my outlook was for SPY, just big picture. Looking at the indexes. So current all-time high right now is sitting at 779.37. I shared my zones because of the price discovery. We were stuck at that 760 for a while, so I don't. I have zones up until there, but we have to kind of wait, right, to see how the price action behaves, and then in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, as far as if we get into that back test that I was referring to that previous all-time high at that 760.40. And as far as trying to time the tops, this is the weekly focus that I have as far as SPY goes is don't fight price discovery, because you'll see those like last week, right? We saw a couple two red days, and if people were calling tops at that point, the next day we said so be careful, trying to time tops. We don't do that. Continue to play the trend. Don't think you don't have to try and be the first one to catch the rejection, or if we finally get a some kind of VOMI price action, as far as paying attention to to news, you can try, but like you can't. Anything can drop at any moment. Something can drop after hours, extended hours. There's nothing you can do, right? So as far as trying to play the news game and stay ahead, there's no way you could time anything as far as the market goes. So just continue to play the trend, have your stops in place. If you have swings, make sure you're able to manage it, and continue to be patient with your setups, and of course, stick with the trend. So right now the trend's been pushing up. If you were buying those dips on these pullbacks, this recovery, you made out pretty good. So as far as the second part that I always like to cover, so that was kind of the market outlook portion. Um, the the primary focus in my channel is obviously focusing on investing. So if you were adding to your long positions, if you're you have recurring investments, as long as you didn't stop them, you're good. Because if you were buying those dips, they've paid off quite nicely. A lot of tickers, especially tech, AI names, some of the mega caps were beat up during that sell off in kind of June July timeframe, and August has been a nice recovery. Right, a lot of names we saw a lot of names kind of recover, not quite back to the levels we saw prior to the June highs, or the beginning of June, but they're getting back up there. So as far as the long term, continue to have your automation on. One of the things I cover in my phase approach to investing is obviously anything that you're contributing to, keep it automated. Don't focus on the highs and lows, in the short time frame. Long term, stay consistent. You're never going to catch the exact bottoms, and if the market feels like it's at all-time highs, you still contribute, because it's essentially built to go up. And when we do get those dips, same kind of concept, right? Don't take don't reduce your contributions, or reduce how much you buy recurring, because those are basically a discount, right? You're adding positions at a discount at that point. So if it's something you plan to hold 2 to 5 years down the line, 10-15% uh, drawdown in a week, look at that as a value add, if it's something you're not going to let go. So that's one thing too, as far as long term, and making sure you have some kind of fundamental approach, and you have a foundation on how you're doing your investing. That's something I also like to help people work with. I have my 5 phase approach. That's my phase approach to investing course. It's on WAP. As far as, I think it's not actively public. I had a lot of people help me out in the room, as far as reviewing it, and I will go ahead and make that live. It's just, I think I kind of shifted my focus a little bit because the income strategy was one of the things I kind of wanted to emphasize because I'm starting to notice that there are not a lot of people that have enough capital to to have those long term portfolios. There's only a small portion that do, but the ones that don't, they may not have a strategy to build those positions yet. So that's kind of what I wanted to get into for the option selling. So to kind of jump to the next phase of what I was wanted to discuss on the Sunday workshop is the option selling, right? If you guys are option sellers and you're using this strategy, if you're not familiar with it, I cover it. I share my watch list weekly. So let's scroll here. So here's an example. These are also going to be posting in on X, but I share the full watch list in the Discord. So as far as the watch list goes, we've been, you know, I've been cautioning people to kind of take a conservative approach. Like, obviously, they can do what they want, but just I'm just sharing what I'm doing. But as far as because of earnings, um, we had the CPI, PPI, the data, things like that, FOMC. Between all that going on, and we had the June and July were pretty rough for a lot of people, I myself included, because you know, I was in positions that were, as far as cash secured puts go, I was kind of sticking with the same strategy, thinking, hey, we're doing pretty good, market's doing good, and so we had a couple pullbacks, which were triggers for where I would open up a position, and except for because of the environment in June, July, what we're used to between April up till end of May, we were seeing these dips get bought up immediately, right? So when I had a trigger for catch your put our previous support, those supports were failing and they kept dropping, and so unfortunately June, July was had to do a lot of management as far as catch your puts go, where I was still playing the same deltas I would play, except for these stocks were just not recovering. And so it would take multiple weeks, right, for these stocks to, you see multiple weeks of red. Some would go 5, 6 weeks. If you look at the weekly chart, there are red, 5, 6 consecutive weeks. So when you're selling cash or put, you're running that strategy, you're having to do a lot of management in the form of rolling. So if you don't know I'm referring to, I cover the fundamentals of the strategy in the options course, options level one. It's focused purely on cash or puts, so you understand exactly how it works, what kind of available outcomes to expect when running that strategy, because it's not as simple as just you either close for profit or you take a loss. There's a couple other things you can do to mitigate losses, or turn what is an unrealized loss to a potential realized win. And so with that, I do want to share one that I an example. I'll go ahead and pull the chart up. This is for Palantir. So Palantir is one where it's a perfect example where I could kind of talk to you about the option selling strategy kind of in its entirety, because the first WAP course that I officially launched is the options level one course, which is focused on cash secured puts, right? So let me pull up, find a blank chart for Palantir. So here, so let me zoom out. This is the Palantir. This is the daily, right? So daily, I'm going to scroll a little bit further back. All right, so just to kind of let you know what happened for Palantir, right? So this was kind of a situation where I was watching, and actually it might make sense if I put my levels on here. Okay. All right. So this is an example of Palantir where I was covering. I was actually I had been selling cash secured puts this whole time as it was going up, and it had hit a high here, and I was watching it for this breakout of 156 to 158, and then it did push towards that 164.53, which was great. I was making cash secured puts, and then nothing was getting assigned at this point. So after I was watching, it did pull back to this 152.67 on the daily, and I went ahead. I think this was, yeah, this was 6-2. So 6-1, I believe I sold a cash secured put, and it was a 150 strike, thinking, okay, if we pulled back, I would be watching between 152 and 147 and see if it falls within that range as far as support goes. So I did go ahead and sell a cash secured put, but as you can see, it it went all the way down to 106.96. So unfortunately, I was only able to roll, I believe, one additional week which rode because it had fallen so fast. So my cash secured put, yes, I made a little bit of premium, but the underlying was down so much that I was not able to continuously roll it further out. So uh, in this case, Palantir is one of the tickers that I had shared in the beginning of the year or early in the part of the year. Was I had been already accumulating it. So when I got assigned, I was only able to roll one time. So I had a 150 strike. I got assigned, and then after assignment, after the premium I collected on the initial cash secured put, and then I rolled it, and then I actually had positions already that had been accumulating. This was my, uh, this was my. Let me pull it. Let's see. I'll share it in here. All right, let me see if it'll just let me post it in here. Let me see. It's trying to see if I can just share it, and I'll just post it in the chat here. So, all right, let's see if it'll take it. All right. So when I took assignment, my cost basis it actually dropped, even though I got assigned at 149 because I already had shares. My average cost basis dropped to about 135. And actually, this even this number fluctuates because as it went up, I still buy shares of Palantir weekly, so it might actually be lower. But this doesn't take into account anything that I've been selling as far as covered calls go. This is just the cost of or the cost basis of my 100 shares assigned plus the shares I already have in the account, and it averaged out to about 135. So as you can see, even though my average was at 135, like by the time I took assignment by the end of this week, let me look at my notes here because I had to actually look at the date I got assigned. So I got assignment on, let's see here. One second. I gotta pull the exact date because I had a screenshot because it's I don't have it in my spreadsheet. I generally I've been a little bit cheating in the way as far as tracking these just to get a quick analysis. I drop it into Chat GPT and it can usually summarize it pretty quickly instead of me having to go through my spreadsheet. So let's see here. Assignment was actually on. I might have to just look at my actual transactions. Give me one moment. All right, so I got assigned on the 17th of June. So let's see, when was the 17th? So yeah, so by the time I rolled it, unfortunately it was in 149s, thinking, okay, we'll get some kind of bounce. But this is kind of what I was talking to you guys earlier about how June and July were kind of rough months, right? Because generally, you would see a dip like this and then you'd see it recover. You get a couple green days, but in Palantir's case, after I sold this put here, June 1st, and I rolled it and I rolled it and I was only able to roll it one strike until I was able to. Unfortunately, I got assigned the end of this week, so the 17th was the end of this week, and so as you can see here, we didn't get any kind of recovery. It sold off pretty big. So we went from about the low here was about 150. I'm sorry, it closed at 152.17. So it actually closed in my zone the day after I sold my put. But unfortunately, it just kept selling. So by the time I got assigned, it had already dropped to about 127.99. Here's what the close was on the 12th. And I'm sorry, here's the actual assignment date. So it closed at 130.63 on assignment date. So I'm thinking, okay, it's not that bad. 130.63. I took assignment, and even after getting assigned, that technically was 149 because my cost basis was reduced because I already had shares. My cost basis was actually that 135 price. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm only about $5 out of the money. I started selling covered calls at this point, but we continue to sell. So I didn't panic because there's a reason why I was accumulating Palantir, because it was a position I wanted to continue, accumulating this year, and add as a long position to exactly what we're doing now, right? To wheel it. And sure enough, it I had levels already pre-marked. So this is kind of part of that conviction is you have levels, right? So it's just kind of like my almost borderline where my stop was. I said if it would have broke in the about under 100. So this was kind of the final zone where I was going to give it. Either I was going to have to roll it like multiple months out, or try attempt to roll it. But in this case, as far as I was already in covered calls, so I was going to have to sell a call really like multiple months out to see if I could at least, collect some kind of premium. But thankfully, it started to recover. That zone held. and we kind of, kind of was hanging out until earnings, right? So earnings in this so this is by this point I've been selling, covered calls, unfortunately under my cost basis because or slightly above my cost basis. I really wanted to sell closer to 149 because even though my cost basis shows 135, because I got assigned at 149, I wanted to get back to that 149 level. That way all the premium I had collected up until that point through, catch your puts and then cover calls would just be all profit. And so I was selling slightly under that. So I was selling about 144s or up to 144s, and then I would think I was in 140s, and then I was based on if it came down, if I saw an opportunity to sell a covered call, I went ahead and sold it. And so uh, after earnings, we saw what happened after earnings. So this was kind of my mistake where I had this other level. So if you zoom in here, this is kind of my a zone, right? So the reason why I sold 140 is because I saw it was just above this zone here where I thought, okay, well, I don't know what kind of reaction we're gonna get for Palantir, but if we get a positive reaction, I'm thinking it might have a little bit of resistance at that 137 to about 139, because as you see here, we've been coming up to it, but not able to break it. Same here, right? We saw this same area tested in July. So basically all through July, it was kind of pinned under that level. And so ahead of earnings, we were sitting at just under 127, and I thought, okay, well, 140 strike feels a bit out of the money. That's about a 14 point reaction, and post bounce earnings, as you can see, it absolutely sent it. So it gapped up. We went from 126, and then it actually continued to push, and so we ran as high as 179.91, or actually 180, hit 180.18. So I have levels up there, but because it had ran so much, so this is kind of the positive I'll show you, which is great. So, one thing is you were selling puts on a position, then you finally take assignment. Yes, it did go lower, so your shares were down at some point. You're right. If you panicked, this is where kind of one of the things you have to pay attention to is your TA, right? So if you didn't have levels here and you just saw this red and you thought, okay, I'm just gonna sell it, right, no matter what, because it just multiple weeks of red. I got assigned. It's now lower than my assignment price. I I had a plan. Thankfully, that's what I stuck to. I stay consistent because I've been in your shoes. I've gotten shaken out of positions where it oversold, and I couldn't handle the drawdown. Right? Maybe I was oversized, and so that's one of the things that you have to I'll talk about after this quick recap is that is a focus of mine. So thankfully, I had my plan. It held, so I was gonna give it time because I was anticipating holding it through, to see kind of what it did through earnings, whether it was positive or negative. I'd be able to just continue to sell covered calls because it kind of went sideways, right? So if you look this consolidation in this area, it was going sideways. So yes, I was continuously selling covered calls because it was never breaking over that level. So I continued to sell covered calls, but here is unfortunately this move up kind of caught me in the sense where I had a open covered call, and so that's one of the things. Whether you're doing cash secured puts or covered calls, is these events, whether it's ER, FOMC, inflation data. These are binary events, right? So it's either going to go positive or negative, for you or against you. So unfortunately, I had an open call because I had to roll it. I'm sorry, not I didn't have to roll it, but I had sold one ahead of ER just because I didn't think it was going to push as high as it did, which was kind of a mistake on my part because unfortunately, yes, if I shared the the cost basis, right? So yes, its total gain is at 46.51, based on my cost basis. It's closed at 174, but I'm actually in a covered call at 155. So even I'm still $20 in the money, but it's not till that covered call is underwater because the share price is 25, about 20 points over that. So I'm kind of in the borderline there. So, I kind of want Palantir to either hang out and chill till November. But if worst case, if it were to stay at this price level through my expiration on my last covered call, I would have to let the shares go at 155 because I'm at a 155 covered call. So yes, it's still going to be green. All the covered call premium I've collected up until that point, I will keep, and then my shares, I will let them go at 155, and which is above my cost basis. So I'm going to make money on the underlying. I'm going to continue to make money on the covered call that I already sold out to November, but I will lose out on, let's say Palantir, but by the time November hits, it's at 200. So I'm unfortunately going to lose out on the $45 potential if it's at 200 because I have to let my shares go at 155 unless I want to continue to roll it again, right? So that is an option. I do have some time on it, so a lot can happen between now and then, and we'll see. And in addition to that, I am continuing to sell cash secured puts against it when I see an opportunity. So like, let's go back to the chart here. I'm sorry, the weekly. This is in the room. So back to kind of what I was saying, this continues. It's still part of my watch list. I do look for opportunities when we get a pullback. So it did close red for the week. I'm not sorry for the week, but for that Friday, we did see a little bit of a pullback. And so I'm gonna watch it to see if it gets down to a level. I may potentially get reassigned shares even at a higher price. So I'd have two lots, and so my 155 covered calls that are in the money. That could be one lot, and then I would be managing a separate position, based on how that one goes. So one thing I wanted to talk about, if you're running, the option selling strategy, is kind of like what I was alluding to earlier, is position size matters, right? So yes, the markets are back at all time high. This is kind of like, I kind of warned a little bit about this last week too, why I was, focusing, uh, as everybody that's selling options, whether you're cover calls or cash cure puts. We had this same environment leading up to June, right? Then June was kind of when everybody was like, kind of got caught off guard because the dips weren't getting bought for an extended amount of time, and so everybody was rolling down. If either rolling down, or if they had to take assignment, they were taking assignment earlier than they were anticipating, and sticking with the same strategy, income strategy. And when they get even if they got assigned, they had to carry it through that drawdown that we saw through June and July. So just want you to be cautious. Position size matters because let's say, like I talked about for Palantir, I only had 100 shares. If I had, 200 shares, 500 shares, four or five catch your puts, and my even though my cost basis is going to be 135, when you see, 500 shares at 135 and it hit that low you saw at 106, that's a pretty big drawdown, right? So if obviously, um, if I had been oversized, maybe I would have handled it differently based on, how much drawdown it had been at that time. I don't know how, if you're running that strategy, what percentage of your account that takes up. So these are all things that you need to factor. And so position size is very important because it's something that can alter. You may not notice it, but it's a mental thing as well, right? You see the red, you see the drawdown, and you may have a trading plan that I kind of mentioned, as far as had levels, right? Based on where I wouldn't, if it had broken past that level, I was gonna either have to roll it, or look to sell a cover call, or really far out to see if I could, kind of hold on to it as long as I can, or it might be a situation where once you get assigned, it's just an investment asset at that point, and so you have stop loss levels, right, for your own positions. Even if you consider it long term, if it's breaking from the fundamentals, or something changed fundamentally, and you're hitting a level like it's either a percentage stop loss or whatever you're using. If it hits the price level, maybe you'll get out and then plan to re-enter. If it gets lower, whatever the case, you have to be mindful because even if you plan for that, if you oversize, mentally, you're gonna be thinking, "This is a lot bigger a loss than you had anticipated," and you might be cutting something. So, imagine had I been oversized on Palantir, and I saw that drawdown from my 135 cost basis, and it was at 106, and I sold before earnings in this crazy run. I'd be kicking myself, right now because you see what just happened, right? We literally, if I sold here because I got scared, after all this selling, and thinking, okay, if it were to lose 106.95, 103.90, I have a big gap down at 88. So I would have literally cut my position, had it closed under here on the daily or weekly, and then I would have started selling cash secure puts either to get back into it, right? Towards this level and then wait for assignment. But thankfully, that level held and I was able to, hold it through. And this happened post ER, right? Positive reaction. Now it's back to 180. Had I been oversized, there's a chance I would have saw this drawdown and say, "Hey, let me just cut my losses here, and then I'll wait, potentially for if it goes lower." I would have broke my plan and I would have let my shares go and missed out on this, right? So that's kind of part of the patience thing I talk about. You have to have a little bit of conviction. You have to trust your TA. So these are all things that I try to share what I see. These are my levels. Obviously, my conviction isn't your conviction. So, you have to decide if this is something you even wanted to get into. Because I share what I get into, but obviously not every ticker that I call out as far as I see a good cash cure put setup is a ticker that you want to own. So just be mindful of that. But the most important thing I wanted to cover for this week's investing workshop was yes, position size matters. Even though we're at all time highs, we're seeing this price action. I'm leaning bullish, but at the same time, I'm not going to start oversizing my cash secure puts because I think we're going to keep going up because I thought the same thing. Palantir is a perfect example. I thought that exact same thing, thinking this small red to start off the month was just going to be a pullback that's going to get bought, and we're going to push for the next leg higher. But what happened? I saw the catcher could put on June 1st, and it went about. Let's pull the Palantir chart. I'll tell you how many weeks in a row it went red after I sold that catcher could put. So this is So yeah, that first week of June. So we went 4 consecutive weeks red after I sold that cash and put. After seeing this move, we hit highs, hit all time high. I thought, okay, this was just going to be a back test and we're going to continue to break out. Instead, it went from 163.70 high and it hit a low of 106.37. So that's kind of what I'm like. I'm not saying it's going to repeat, but I'm just being mindful. When you get parabolic move like this, there is a chance, you're going to see a deeper pullback. So, not just with Palantir, but just the market in general. Like I mentioned, just because you see a little bit of red doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a full on reversal like we saw here. I'm just being, overall protective and conservative as far as my sizing goes, because yes, that I was sized pretty good as far as April. I ran up a lot of cash cure puts. I was showing, if you guys saw some of my monthly P&Ls that I was sharing, just pure realized options income. The April push through the all time highs to June was very good, and so if we run into that market again, as far as to close out the year, I will continue to sell cash secured puts, on pullbacks, but I'm gonna be a little bit more cautious on my sizing. I won't, I'll never go full size, as far as anything goes. Especially these momentum tickers that are pushing up like that. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. So as far as the market recap goes, I am, focusing on the trend. Because let's go back to here. So kind of the recap. So as far as overall market outlook, um, continue to focus on the trend. Just markets and price discovery as far as SPY goes, it's all time highs. If we see some pullbacks, the lowest I would kind of watch for is if it backtests the previous all time high, that 760.40, right? So yes, that's a pretty big range if you're looking at where SPY closed, right? So let's go back to SPY real quick, and I'll kind of close it with that. All right, so SPY. Yeah, so SPY closed at 776.34. So if I'm saying that the range I'm kind of looking at potentially is down to that 760.40. This is kind of, you might think, oh wow, that's about 16 points out of the way, but we just had a week. This was a 28-point range we had, 8-3, right? So 2 weeks ago, we had a 28-point range on SPY. So it's not out of the question. I just want you to be aware that, just because if we even pull back that far, doesn't still doesn't mean the trend is lost, right? If we hold and consolidate, that might just be setting up for the next leg because this was a resistance. If that resistance flips to a support, then this push has a lot of room to run still, potentially, right? So obviously, catalyst things could come up, news, the Iran war, Trump could say something. Those are things out of our control. We just have to play the price action. And as far as like I mentioned, this run is that push that I was talking about. So April all the way to June. So I was selling cash secured puts. A lot of you guys probably, and I was sizing pretty decent size. So if we get a similar situation, I may not go that same kind of size, but I will continue to sell cash secured puts on tickers, as they're pushing up. And so hopefully, if you guys are tuning in, you guys have any questions, any insights, if you don't even know what the strategy is all about, and you follow me on X, I post my link tree as well. I do have the fundamentals as far as running this strategy. I share my watch list for free, of course. And then in the Discord, if you're already in it, feel free to tag me if you have any questions. I do these workshops every other week, and just want to give you a heads up. I may switch up the time. I used to do these on the weekdays. I may go back to weekdays just because with school back in session, Sundays are a little bit tougher. Weekdays might work out a little bit better for me, and that's about it. So thank you guys for tuning in. Um, feel free to if you have any questions. I share my watch list. They'll be posting on X. They're scheduled to post, I believe, right after just after this workshop. So this is recorded. So if you missed it, I'll go ahead and let's see, close it up right now. So again, this is Dodge This. This is Sunday, 8/16 investing workshop. I just wanted to, hopefully you guys have a great week. Check out the watch list. And if you're interested in learning about this income strategy, I do have an options level 1 course. It's on WAP. Tag me or ping me if you have any questions about that. And then of course, I'll talk to you guys soon in the Discord. Thank you. I appreciate it.